Leinster stretch away from Sale to reach a 6th Champions Cup semi-final on the bounce. My name's Mark. Let's talk rugby. You have to go back to 2020 to the last time that Leinster failed to make the semi-final of the Champions Cup. But all those semi-finals and finals as well haven't lifted the trophy in that period. So be interested to see how to go from here. But let's concentrate on today's game first. So Sale, they win a free of the scrum as Leinster engage early. George Ford kicks an up and under, but Keenan diffuses it and Leinster can come forward. And that was a little tableau of, the things that Sale really, did good today, or at least, were key components of the way they were trying to attack Leinster. They were on top in the scrum, and Ford putting up a lot of up and unders, getting changed sometimes, but others not so much, and maybe a bit more variety to their game. Could have helped them, but it kept them in the game for the entire first half. So got to give them credit for that. So Tommy O'Brien then. He steals the ball at the breakdown, kicks in behind and gives chase, and that forces Carpenter to put it into touch close to his own line. Thought Carpenter was certainly a standout in the losing team today. Attacking line out to Leinster. Bamba playing Ryan's arm in the air, and it's a penalty to Leinster. Leinster go through a number of phases close to the line before Sheehan, coming like a train, gets on the ball over between the posts, converted for 7 points to 0. And he thought at that point maybe Leinster would get a couple more quick fire tries and maybe look a bit more comfortable, but it didn't quite work out that way. They work it back into 22, but there's a handling error. Sale kick it downfield. Harry Byrne cleans up the loose ball in his own 22 under a massive pressure from Carpenter. Sale then go through a number of phases on the edge of the Leinster 22, but they're going nowhere. So Ford goes to the skies again, but yet again Keenan diffuses it. Leinster carry it close to the Sale 22, but another knock on. And it's just stripping them of momentum at this point. Sale then make an absolute mess of a line out in their own half, but it actually leads to a decent break because ball bobbles. Dupree is the first one there. He carries well before actually putting a decent kick into the Leinster 22. There's a good chase, puts the pressure on, but Leinster are able to get the ball clear. Sale then, as I said, been getting some change out of their up and unders, especially when they were targeting Ioane. That was one part of his game that wasn't quite good today, but overall I thought he had a really good game for Leinster. And then they look like they have a good position, when Keenan spills it into 22, but after Timo review, it's a penalty to Leinster for taking him out in the air. Leinster then turns Sale over just outside the 22 after great work from Tommy O'Brien. They look to shift it, but Baird then knocks the ball on, and you feel like if Leinster can kind of clean things up a little bit, they will start to put more points on the board. Leinster then attack off a scrum out left. James Gibson Park kicks in behind. Ioane does really well to get with, slides, and then sort of maneuvers his body so his body is ahead of the ball to make sure that they retain possession. But then Van der Fleur's pass to McCarthy is down around his ankles, very poor, and there's another knock on. Sale then win a penalty at the resulting scrum, and they come forward, and he had a scrum, again a big part of the things that Sale did well today. Leinster then pinged for not releasing, and Ford makes it 7 points to 3 from the tee. Leinster attacking up the right. There's a deliberate knock on, so Dupree goes to the bin. Leinster kick the penalty to the edge of 22. Strong carry from Sheehan. That gets them 5 metres out, but there's a knock on. Sale able to clear. 7-3 is the halftime score. Into the second half, Leinster break up the left through Ioane. who gets deep into 22. Sale scramble well, and then Vermeulen gets over the ball to win a penalty. But again, danger signs from Leinster. They're finding space on the edges, with more regularity now. Leinster then break up the right. Byrne setting Ringrose off. He finds Bird, who he's got a clear run into the corner, but decides to pass it back inside to Keenan, who gets over to score. Conversions missed 12 points to 7. We then have a Timo check for a high hit on Ryan. It's shoulder to head. There are 2 tacklers involved. So referee says it's yellow card threshold and no further mitigation. So McIntyre goes to the bin. We then have an overlap in the yellow cards for a minute or two. Ford then lands a penalty to keep Sale in touch, 12 points to 6. Leinster then strike from distance. Ioane with a nice offload on the right. They move it left. Conan breaks, holds the cover, and then gives a nice long pass to Bird, who's got the pace to go over in the corner, converted for 19 points to 6. Keenan then with a brilliant take from an up and under just inside the Sale 22. Leinster move it left. Byrne with an offload out of tackle. Sheehan takes it on, then puts Ioane over to score, converted for 26 points to 6. Leinster strike again as O'Brien wins the race to a chip over the top from Byrne to dot down and score, converted for 33 points to 6. Sale then finally get themselves a try. Really good handling to get Wills over in the corner. Brilliant touchline conversion from Ford, 33 points to 13. Leinster then, with the Sale line under siege, they win a penalty. They opt to kick it from right in front. Byrne pops it over for 36 points to 13. Leinster then steal the Sale line out just inside their own 22. Sheehan goes marauding over halfway, finds Osborne in support, and he's got the pace despite a desperate ankle tap to get over between the posts, converted for 43 points to 13, and that was the full-time score. So let's have a look at the stats, and then we'll talk about each of the teams. So let me pull the stats up here on the official site. Okay, so first off, 6 tries to 1. So that Leinster attack, clicking, still not there, still not the level of, a Bordeaux or even Toulouse at the minute, because there were those handling errors in the first half, but it certainly looked much slicker in the second half. And the thing now is, previously you go back maybe a couple of weeks and then a couple of months, etc., and you can see the progression of it. Before it was a case of too many players overrunning their lines, slightly misaligned, getting in each other's ways and causing errors. Now everyone seems to be hitting their lines pretty much spot on. And then it was just wet conditions, handling not quite there in the first half, but then they sorted that in the second half and they got the rewards out of it. So certainly hasn't been a vintage Leinster this season, but they are building through the competition. They're not the only team building through the competition either, though. So they're going to hope that they can kind of hit those levels that they need to potentially win a semi-final, and if they can do it, to get to a final and potentially lift the trophy that has evaded them for the last kind of, as I said, 6 years of going to semi-finals. On to attack then. 518 meters made to 243, and that's from 163 carries to 75. So both teams round about 3 meters per carry. Clean breaks then 20 for Leinster and 3 for Sale, and Leinster's defenders beating 21. So pretty much 95% conversion rate of defenders being into clean breaks, and that is crazy. We talked about Glasgow in the earlier match where they beat 30 defenders but only made 4 clean breaks. So again, you can see that Leinster attack really is coming good. And I think if the hands had been better in that first half, we would have seen an even wider margin between the teams by the end today. Sale then 3 breaks from 18 defenders beaten, so 1 in 6 conversion for them. Or around, like, just as a comparison, as I said, Leinster around about 95%, Sale at 16%. But that's, we've seen Leinster at that level early on this season as well. Offload sent 7 each, passes 178 to 103. Leinster 62% possession to 38 and 66% territory to 34. So almost 2 to 1 on both of those stats. Defence then 85 tackles versus 183. Leinster 74% of the tackling. We talked about it before. The way they tackle, aggressive in defence, shooters, umbrella defense as well. It means that they're not going to be hitting that 80% that most other teams will when the defensive system is working as planned. Leinster are more about kind of the scramble in behind. You might have like one guy missing a tackle, but fraction of a second later somebody else makes it, and therefore they end up with more missed tackles. And that's great when the scramble is working, but when the scramble is not working, that's when we've seen poor performances from Leinster. 84% for Sale is excellent, given again the fact that Leinster made 20 line breaks, and you're hitting 84% at Champions Cup level. That is elite level of tackle success, but still nowhere near Leinster. And it just again shows the levels that Leinster reached at times. But Sale, yes, they were nowhere near Leinster on the scoreboard today, but it doesn't mean that they're a bad side. It's just that Leinster are getting up to that kind of level that only 2 or 3 teams in Europe have been hitting over the last couple of years. And again, Leinster not quite there at the minute. Turnovers 1 then 5 to 3 in favour of Leinster. Set piece, 12 lineouts for 92% for Leinster, 14 lineouts 1 for Sale for just 67%. So I guess 14 out of 21 for them. So that was very poor, but a lot of that was the pressure that Leinster put on their lineout. Scrums 1 then, 2 for Leinster and 5 for Sale, 67% to 71%. Poor scrummaging percentages for both teams, but again, I thought Sale were the better of the 2 teams in the scrum. Kicking then, kicks from hand, 40 for Leinster, 29 for Sale. So in the match, 69 kicks from hand, and that compares to 12 versus 14 for Glasgow and Toulon. So they had 26 between them. So in this game, we had almost 3 times, 3 times as many kicks almost in this game. And then meters made 1,005 from the kicks for Leinster and 874 for Sale. So Leinster kicking average 25, which is on that sweet spot for when you're going for a lot of contestable kicks, and Sale in around the same area as well. Retained kicks 8 for Leinster, 5 for Sale. So 5 is a decent return for Sale, especially given the form that Keenan was in, but the fact again that was a big part of their strategy, and that Leinster retained more kicks than them, it certainly didn't bode well for them. Penalties, goals then, 1 for Leinster, 2 for Sale. On to breakdown then, 112 rucks 1 to 56, 1 ruck loss to 3, 97% for Leinster, 92% for Sale. And you look at that and you think, 92% isn't too bad, but consistently look at teams who, when it's a close game, both teams will be like 95, 96, 97, that kind of bracket. It doesn't vary too much. So like a 5% difference is actually very big in terms of ruck success. Turnovers 1 in the rucks then, 5 versus 3. Mauls, Leinster 4 from 4 and Sale 3 from 4. On to discipline, 9 penalties conceded by Leinster, they've kept it in single figures, which is good, but they definitely want to reduce that for the semi-final. 7 penalties conceded for Sale, and then 2 yellow cards for them as well. And the yellow cards certainly had an impact on Sale, but it doesn't have to be the deciding factor in the game. We saw earlier again in the Glasgow game where Toulon actually won the yellow card period when they had a man in the bin, and was a big driver, I think, to them actually winning that game. Okay, so there are your stats. Let's talk about the team. So we start with Sale, and I saw who is it? The chap that does Egg Chasers. He was talking about Matt Williams writing a column in, I don't know, the Irish Times, or I don't know. I don't really, I don't watch a lot of the pundits on TV, like the likes of Matt Williams and stuff. I used to when I was younger. I don't read their stuff either. I just kind of, I like to make my own mind up about stuff. But apparently he was saying that, Sale were disrespecting the competition, and saying that because they sent the weakened side away to Toulouse, and they got 77-7 in that game, and that it was disrespectful to Toulouse, to their fans, to their revenue streams, etc. And then he was kind of pointing the finger about them in this game as well. But to my understanding, Sale sent their strongest team available. They do have injuries, and they don't have the squad depth that a Leinster does, because obviously Leinster have lots of injuries as well. But it tends not to be noticed because the player who steps in will almost, not always, but a lot of them will be capped internationals, whether for Ireland or for, you got Ioane from New Zealand as well. And then, like, you have the, people like Slimani out at the minute, who was, a stalwart for France for years as well. So, to say that about Sale, I think is very disingenuous of him. Like, they one of the few England teams that actually made it, this far in the competition. Like, I think what we had 3 England teams, was it? Into, yeah, because we had Bath and Northampton played each other, and then Sale were the 3rd team. So, so to say that they're disrespecting the competition, I don't buy that at all. And I thought, they gave a good count themselves in the first half today. And I think, look at that tactic and go back to, maybe December, the start of the pool stages, or even January, the end of the pool stages, where Leinster weren't firing. That what Sale did today would have got change out of that Leinster team from a couple of months ago, and the game would have been a lot tighter. We wouldn't have seen that acceleration from Leinster in the second half, because they didn't have it back then, because the errors would have continued. And then the fact that Sale were on top of the scrum, probably would have meant that more errors from Leinster, more scrums, more penalties to Sale, potential yellow cards for Leinster because of the number of penalties to give them away in the scrum, and then they get pegged in their own half, and then suddenly it's a very different contest. But as I said, Leinster, they've been building, they've left it very late in the season to actually kind of start hitting their straps. But the fact that they brought that extra accuracy in the second half just pulled them away from Sale. And as I said, there's no disrespect to Sale, is that when a team like Leinster, that do have the talent that they have available to them, hit those levels, it's very hard for any team to live with them. And I'm not just talking about it being, oh, I'm a Leinster fan, Leinster are amazing, because I criticise them all the time. What I'm talking about is, whether it's a Leinster or a Bordeaux or Toulouse or La Rochelle, previously, or Northampton, those teams that are in that kind of very small group of teams who can, just rise a level or two above every other team. And it's not just about the sales and accessories of the world. Like we've seen, we've seen them do it to each other. Leinster do it to Toulouse, or Toulouse do it to Bordeaux, or Bordeaux do it to Northampton, or Northampton do it to Leinster, or whoever, right? And then obviously La Rochelle doing it to Leinster a couple of times as well. That when a team like that really are like firing, even if it's only for a small period during the game, it's very hard for even teams who are generally on the same level as them to actually live with them, because they've just gone that extra, step above. And maybe in games it'll swing back and forth, or maybe sometimes it's just they do that for 80 minutes and it's a one-sided score against, some of the absolute top teams across Europe. So, I think Sale, again, good at counting themselves in the first half, and then it was just a case of they didn't have it in that second half to live with Leinster. So I think they can be proud of the fact that they've gotten to, to a quarter final. They're not having the best season domestically. They're not a fancy side from the Premiership either. Again, they're not like a Bath or Northampton, who were kind of the two favourite teams from England this year, just in terms of their performances, whether it be in the Premiership or in this competition over the last few years. They're not Saracens who've had, who've kind of been there and done that in the past in this competition as well, or Leicester, who kind of have that history in it as well. So I think, they did really well to get here, and let's hope that it's not just kind of a not just a one-off kind of thing for them. Now, the fact that they're struggling in the league, whether they qualify next year or not, is another thing. But yeah, they acquitted themselves well. I think Leinster, first half, there was a lot of kind of effort going in, but not much quality. And in the second half, then they brought the quality, they pulled away. Scrum's still an issue. I think definitely the number of injuries they shipped in this game will be an issue as well, because as I said, yes, they have injuries. They're able to cope with injuries better than a lot of other teams, especially, Premiership teams. But it's not a infinite pool of talent that they have available. So the fact that they're getting injuries in the front row, where they struggled all year anyway, is definitely an issue. The likes of Van der Fleur happened to go off, even though Penny come on and did well. Penny's not kind of at the level to be able to reach those, to reach that kind of performance, starting in a semi-final, 10 times out of 10, you'd expect, if Josh Van der Fleur was starting in the semi-final, you'd expect, at least a 7 out of 10 performance from him. Or if he didn't, then probably the team got absolutely dismantled anyway. Whereas Penny can definitely hit those heights, but just not as consistently. But yeah, I thought, the injuries are definitely going to be a worry. Line out went very well. The attack is firing well. The scramble on defence was good. The competitiveness in the air too. Again, like running lines, and not just like ball carriers or receivers. The dummy runs as well are fixing the defense and making it easier to get to those edges and get in behind. And once they get in behind, the ability then to finish things off, we saw in that second half, it really is coming good. So there's plenty of positives certainly for Leinster, but again, you feel like they're now coming up in the semi-final against Toulon, who have who did something similar to Sale did in the first half, and this one, which was just hanging on. But then they had the ability in the second half of their quarterfinal to put their foot on the gas as well, and get themselves a little bit ahead. And this Leinster team, very different, in terms of how they behave when they're trying to chase someone down, or when they have that lead and they're beginning to stretch away. Two very different kind of mental states, I would say, from the team in that regard. So be interesting to see if that ability that Leinster kind of developed through the pool stages of having to come from behind with 20 minutes to go will help them if things are tight in that semi-final. But for now, they're in the semi-final. I thought Harry Byrne was excellent at 10. I think the debate about who Leinster's starting number 10, at least for this season, should be over. Again, I'll reiterate though, I'm not saying put Prendergast on the scrap heap. I think there's some brilliant coaches there in Leinster. He's a young guy, give him the support, build him back up. But it doesn't mean because he's built back up that he can suddenly waltz back in to the 10 shirt. He's got to fight for it. He's got to win it by merit from Harry Byrne, and that's going to make both of them better. And I think in the long run, it's going to be much better for Leinster. And that competition now coming into the run into the end of the season, semi-finals of this competition, certainly looks like they're going to at least qualify for the quarterfinals of the URC as well. So plenty of places to fight over, and that should drive performances from here on out.